the beginning of the story, we're told that a town called Chester's Mill used to be just like any other small American town. But then, a series of horrifying events began unfolding there, turning the entire town into a place worse than hell itself. So what exactly happened that made it so dangerous? Let's find out. The story begins with a young man named Barbie, who is burying a dead body deep in the woods. Barbie isn't a local, and the injury on his forehead makes it pretty clear he must have gotten into a brutal fight with a man before he died. The quiet woods hide far more than anyone could ever imagine. After burying the body, Barbie gets back into his car and starts driving out of town. But then, he suddenly comes face to face with Sheriff Duke Perkins in a patrol car. The sight of the sheriff rattles him just enough to take his eyes off the road for a split second, but somehow, he manages to avoid getting caught and keeps driving. One wrong move is all it takes for everything to change. Just then, he spots several cows standing right in the middle of the highway. To avoid hitting them, he jerks the steering wheel hard, sending his car off the road and straight into a pasture filled with cattle. And in that single moment, his escape begins falling apart completely. The crash leaves Barbie with a few minor injuries. A few seconds later, the ground suddenly starts shaking violently like an earthquake. Then, out of nowhere, something drops from the sky right in front of him, and everything instantly goes silent. Barbie looks over and realizes one of the cows has been sliced clean in half by whatever just fell from above. Still shaken, he carefully reaches out to touch it and discovers it's an invisible wall so unbelievably sharp that it has sliced several houses in half as well. Just then, a young man named Joe runs over and asks if he's okay. The invisible barrier is unlike anything anyone has ever seen before. Barbie is left staring at the wall in complete shock. On the other side of town, Sheriff Duke Perkins and Linda receive reports that the entire town has lost electrical power, the phone lines are down, and the internet has stopped working. Even every satellite connection has suddenly gone offline. Then, a plane flying over Chester's Mill slams directly into the invisible barrier and crashes, sending everyone into even greater panic. The terrifying truth becomes impossible for anyone there to ignore anymore. It quickly becomes clear that this isn't just an invisible wall. It's a massive dome-shaped barrier that has sealed off nearly half the town. The town is trapped, and nobody has any idea why. Meanwhile, over at the local radio station, Phil and his assistant Dodie are trying to get the broadcast signal back on the air. Both of them are confused about why the signal suddenly disappeared. Phil even thinks this could be the perfect opportunity to boost the station's ratings, so the two of them immediately get to work trying to restore the transmission. At the same time, a fire engine is racing toward the dome from the opposite side. Barbie realizes the danger just before another deadly collision happens. He desperately signals the firefighters to stop, preventing the truck from crashing into the invisible barrier. A short time later, several law enforcement officers arrive to investigate, but none of them can figure out what the mysterious dome actually is. Around the same time, the town councilman, Big Jim, also shows up, but he's just as confused as everyone else. Police then receive word that every road leading into Chester's Mill has been shut down because the dome is causing multiple serious traffic accidents. No one outside can get in, and no one inside can leave. Not far away, a young man named Junior is spending time intimately with a nurse named Angie, who also happens to be Joe's older sister. While the town falls apart, personal lives are about to unravel too. After they're intimate, Junior tells Angie that he's deeply in love with her, but Angie makes it clear that she doesn't feel the same way about him. Her answer completely shatters Junior, and the two of them quickly get into a heated argument. The fight escalates until Angie slaps him across the face and storms out. After that, we're introduced to a family of three, Carolyn, Alice, and their daughter Nori, who are driving toward Chester's Mill. None of them realize what is already waiting just ahead. They have no idea that the mysterious dome has already sealed off the town. Elsewhere, we meet Julia, a well-known investigative reporter in Chester's Mill. One day, a woman calls her with confidential information. She says she recently saw 6 trucks loaded with propane entering Chester's Mill and believes that such a massive shipment of fuel could be part of something far more dangerous. Julia promises to look into it. Sometimes the biggest warning signs are the easiest to overlook completely, but because she's overwhelmed with work, she never gets around to investigating the tip. Meanwhile, Big Jim heads to the local radio station and makes an emergency announcement. The mystery grows deeper as the entire town slips into chaos.
Carolyn, who is driving into Chester's Mill with Alice and Nori, hears the emergency announcement on the radio, but they assume it's just some kind of advertisement, so they ignore it. Moments later, their car almost slams into the dome, but they're saved at the last second when a truck coming from the opposite direction crashes into the invisible barrier first. Carolyn immediately hits the brakes after witnessing the terrifying wreck. The shocking accident causes Nori to suffer a seizure and she loses consciousness. But just before passing out, she whispers something about a pink star. She is rushed to the hospital, which is already overflowing with people injured by the strange events happening throughout town. The hospital is quickly becoming the center of an unfolding nightmare. At the same time, Julia and Barbie are helping bring injured people into the emergency room. Julia's husband is a doctor at the same hospital, so she goes looking for him, but he isn't there. She then learns that he never works on Sundays, even though he has always told her that he does. A painful truth begins surfacing long before anyone finds real answers. Outside the hospital, Barbie runs into Angie. Seeing the two of them together immediately fills Junior with jealousy. Meanwhile, the military seals off the town's borders, and despite bringing in numerous scientists and experts, no one can figure out the true cause of the mysterious dome. The entire town is now isolated, with no explanation in sight. A few hours later, Big Jim meets with Sheriff Duke Perkins to discuss the propane shipments. Their conversation reveals that they already knew at least something about the dome before it appeared, but neither of them is willing to talk openly about it. Meanwhile, Barbie was only supposed to stay in Chester's Mill for one day, and with nowhere to spend the night, he decides to sleep inside his car. That's when Junior approaches him and warns him to stay away from Angie. Before long, the warning turns into a threat, leaving Barbie wondering what he had done wrong. Just then, Julia arrives, bringing the confrontation to an end. The tension between them keeps building with every passing moment. The scene then shifts to a group of teenagers throwing a party, completely ignoring the crisis surrounding the town. Joe is there as well, talking with another teenager about everything that's happening. Suddenly, Joe suffers a seizure and starts talking about the pink star, the exact same words Nori spoke earlier. The same mysterious vision is now connecting people across the town. Meanwhile, Angie is home alone when Junior suddenly breaks in, kidnaps her, and takes her to an old underground storm shelter built by his father. There, he tells her that he already knows about the dome surrounding the town. Angie also discovers that Big Jim is Junior's father. Junior explains that his father had always been worried about protecting the family, which is why he built a shelter in the first place. What was built for protection is about to become a prison instead. Meanwhile, Julia invites Barbie to stay at her house. As soon as Barbie notices a photograph of Julia's husband, he realizes it's the very same man he killed earlier that morning. Elsewhere, Linda and Sheriff Duke Perkins are monitoring traffic to keep vehicles from accidentally crashing into the dome. Then, without warning, the sheriff suddenly suffers a heart attack and dies on the spot. From there, the story flashes back to the events of that morning. Barbie had come to town to meet Julia's husband, who was a doctor, to collect a payment, but the doctor refuses to pay him, and the argument quickly turns into a fight. During the struggle, Barbie accidentally shoots and kills him. One tragic mistake changes everything before the day has even begun. Barbie knows it was an accident, but he also knows he'll be punished for it. To cover it up, he buries the doctor's body in the woods. Back in the present, Barbie wakes up and realizes the chain around his neck is missing. He asks Julia if she's seen it, and she tells him she'll help him look for it. Then he remembers exactly where the missing chain was left behind.
It suddenly comes back to him that the chain must have fallen inside the cabin where he killed Julia's husband. At the same time, Joe is with his friend Ben, the one who helped him during his seizure the previous night. Ben asks Joe about the pink star he kept talking about, but Joe can't remember anything about it. The answers seem closer than ever, yet remain completely out of reach. Over at the radio station, Dodie successfully uses a special communications device to make contact with people outside the dome. She can hear the soldiers talking to each other, but she doesn't speak to them. The soldiers are just as confused, trying to figure out what this invisible barrier actually is. Meanwhile, Big Jim is having breakfast at the diner when Linda arrives and tells him that Sheriff Duke Perkins has died. The two of them immediately head to the town mortician, Lester, who was also one of the sheriff's closest friends. Back at the underground storm shelter, Angie desperately tries to call for help, but no one hears her. A little later, Junior returns and chains her to the bed. Some secrets become even more dangerous after the sheriff's sudden death. Big Jim brings Lester with him, and Lester is devastated after learning about the sheriff's death. When Linda isn't nearby, Big Jim and Lester quietly discuss the propane shipments from the previous month. Their conversation reveals that all three of them were involved in bringing the propane into town and had deliberately kept it hidden from everyone else. Now that the sheriff is dead, they know he can never expose their involvement, which works in their favor. The truth is buried deeper than anyone inside the town realizes. Later that day, Linda arrives at the sheriff's office and catches Big Jim searching through the sheriff's desk. When she asks what he's looking for, he tells her he's trying to find the sheriff's will. In reality, he's searching for paperwork connected to the propane shipments that could expose both him and Lester. After leaving the office, Big Jim tells Lester he believes those documents are probably at the sheriff's house, and he immediately sends Lester there to retrieve them. Every missing document could destroy everything Big Jim is trying to protect. Meanwhile, Julia rushes to the radio station to see Dodie, where she discovers they can listen to conversations between the soldiers outside the dome using the communications device. From what they hear, Julia learns the military is trying to dig underneath the dome, but every attempt has failed. She then broadcasts the news across Chester's Mill over the radio, spreading fear throughout the entire town as people begin to panic. At the same time, scientists test how the dome reacts to water. Joe notices that the dome behaves almost like a giant screen, allowing only tiny amounts of water to pass through. He explains this observation to Ben. Even science is failing to explain the impossible barrier surrounding them. Elsewhere, Barbie heads to the doctor's office to look for his missing chain. He finally finds it, but before he can leave, Junior walks in and catches him there. Junior immediately asks if he slept with Angie. Barbie assumes Junior saw him searching for the chain and believes he can't let him simply walk away, so he brutally beats him. One misunderstanding quickly explodes into another violent confrontation inside the town. Meanwhile, Lester arrives at the sheriff's house and searches for the propane shipment documents. After a while, he finds them inside a desk drawer and burns them. As he's leaving, he accidentally knocks something over, causing the flames to spread to the curtains. Within moments, the entire house is engulfed in fire. Crowds quickly gather and desperately try to put out the blaze, but without a fire engine, it seems impossible. If the house is allowed to burn completely, the temperature inside the dome could rise enough to threaten everyone's lives. Barbie steps forward and leads the effort to fight the fire. The burning house becomes another deadly threat trapped beneath a massive dome. While everyone is battling the fire, Linda suddenly hears Lester screaming from inside the house. She rushes in, drags him to safety, and sends him to the doctor for treatment. Even after an hour of non-stop effort, the fire continues spreading instead of dying down. Finally, Big Jim arrives with a front-end loader and knocks the house down, allowing the flames to be brought under control. Once everything is over, over, the exhausted townspeople gather together. A police officer named Paul, completely frustrated, says they'll never escape the dome because even the smoke from the fire can't get out. He believes every single person trapped inside will eventually die there. Fear begins breaking people long before the dome ever physically can. As Paul says this, he fires his gun into the air. The bullet ricochets off the dome, strikes another police officer, and kills him instantly. Paul is immediately placed under arrest. The dome turns one careless shot into an unimaginable tragedy for everyone. After night falls, Joe and his friends head out to go skating. That's when Nori approaches Joe and says she needs to charge her phone. Joe takes her back to his house because his family owns a generator, making it one of the few homes in town that still has electricity. Meanwhile, Linda transports Paul to the jail, where a crowd has gathered outside the police station, protesting what they see as the town's broken law enforcement system. The town's fragile order is beginning to collapse from every direction. Big Jim calms everyone down by assuring them that help will be provided whenever it's needed. After Paul is locked inside the holding cell, he suddenly appears to suffer a heart attack. Linda immediately rushes into the cell to help him, but she quickly realizes he's only pretending. Taking advantage of the situation, Paul shoves her inside the cell, locks the door behind her, and escapes from the police station. Meanwhile, Junior returns to the underground storm shelter to see Angie. By now, Angie realizes that if she's ever going to escape, she'll have to manipulate Junior into trusting her. She starts talking about childhood memories, reminding him how they used to explore an abandoned tunnel together. She suggests that maybe the dome didn't affect the tunnel, and if that's true, they might be able to escape through it. Angie knows deception is now her only possible way to survive. Angie believes Junior has fallen for the story and hopes he'll finally let her go, but instead, Junior decides he'll explore the tunnel by himself. Around the same time, Big Jim arrives at the police station and is shocked to find Linda locked inside the holding cell instead of Paul. He quickly lets her out, and they discover that Paul escaped with a rifle and several rounds of ammunition. The escaped officer is now armed and far more dangerous than before. Linda immediately heads into the woods to search for him because she knows Paul often went hunting there. Every passing minute gives Paul a greater chance to disappear completely. Meanwhile, Big Jim organizes a search party to capture Paul. At the diner, Carolyn is worried about Nori because she spent the previous night at Joe's house without telling either of her mothers. At the same time, Big Jim asks the townspeople to join the search, and he also invites Barbie because he proved himself to be a strong leader while helping fight the fire. As they make their way into the woods, Barbie casually reveals that he previously served in the military, impressing the rest of the search team. His military experience suddenly becomes valuable in the growing crisis. Elsewhere, Julia spots Junior heading toward the tunnel with a backpack. She stops him and asks where he's going. Nervous and clearly in a hurry, Junior tells her he's just going to meet a friend nearby. His behavior only makes Julia more suspicious, so she secretly follows him all the way to the tunnel. Meanwhile, Joe and Nori are having breakfast together at Joe's house. Joe has never really been alone with a girl before, so he feels awkward and nervous, while Nori is confident, relaxed, and quick with her responses. Sometimes the smallest moments quietly hide the biggest turning points ahead. Just then, Ben shows up with two girls who need to charge their phones. Hoping to impress them, Ben wants to use Joe's generator. Joe reluctantly agrees, even though he knows a working generator is one of the most valuable resources left in town and doesn't like seeing it wasted. Meanwhile, deep in the woods, the search team finally locates Paul, but before anyone can stop him, he shoots one of the men in the leg. The search suddenly turns into a desperate fight for survival instead. The other guy stays behind to help him, while Jim and Barbie take off after Paul. On the other side, Junior makes it to the very end of the tunnel, where he realizes the dome has sealed off the tunnel too. He walks right up to the invisible wall, and as soon as he gets close, his flashlight suddenly turns on. Just then, Julia arrives and sees him there. Junior gets furious when he notices Julia, because she followed him all the way there. Junior suddenly realizes there may be absolutely no way out anymore. Julia stops him as he starts punching the invisible wall like he's lost his mind. After that, the two of them sit down and talk. Julia tells him that because of one mistake she made in her past, she ended up stuck in this dead-end job as a newspaper reporter. Meanwhile, Joe's house fills up with people who have come to use his generator for their own needs. Fear spreads quietly as desperation pushes everyone closer to the breaking point. One troublemaker starts trying to charge people money to use the generator, even though it doesn't belong to him, but no one has the courage to stand up to him. No one dares challenge the bully, despite knowing he has no authority. Seeing this, Nori steps in to try to handle the situation, but things only get more heated. Before anything worse can happen, the power suddenly goes out. Nori is happy that Joe stood by her during the argument. Meanwhile, out in the woods, Barbie and Jim finally catch up to Paul, but Paul already has his rifle drawn and is just about to shoot Jim when Linda comes up from behind and shoots Paul. One split second changes everything before another life can be taken. On the other side, Carolyn goes to Joe's house to see her daughter Nori and tells her she needs to start acting more responsibly. After getting scolded, Joe and Nori hold each other's hands, creating a strange spark between them. At that exact moment, they both begin having seizures. The mysterious connection grows stronger with every strange event they experience together. Both of them start talking about a pink star at the same time. Elsewhere, Junior goes back to the fallout shelter to see Angie, but this time, he's carrying a first aid kit. Angie patches up his injuries and secretly keeps the scissors for herself. Meanwhile, Julia and Barbie finally return home after an exhausting day, but after everything Junior told her, Julia has started to suspect Barbie. When Barbie goes to take a shower, Julia begins searching through his belongings. Hidden secrets quietly wait for the moment they can no longer stay buried. Some people survive, but they never truly escape what they lived through. If stories like this stay with you, stay with Hopcart Paru, because some nightmares don't end, they simply stay with you forever.